Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. The Citizenship Amendment Bill. There was a lot of noise created about this where the opposition tried to do its best to try and scuttle this, even though one of the main opposition parties, the Congress, was the one who wanted to move this thing way back many years ago. For a deeper perspective and understanding of what this means, let's reach out to Sri Rajeev Srinivasan. Rajeev, welcome to PGurus channel.
Hi, Sri. Good to be here. Thank you for having me on the channel on this topic.
So, Rajeev, what was the rationale for this current government to move the Citizenship Amendment Bill? And what, in your opinion, could the government have done better to, not have these kind of protests in Assam and so on and so forth? What is your take on this whole bill?
Well, the very first thing is the fact that it is called the Citizenship Amendment Bill. Okay, that shows poor marketing and poor communications, because this is not an amendment bill. It is a citizenship granting bill, because a group of people who were not earlier eligible for citizenship have been given this eligibility now. It's not as though anybody who already is a citizen is going to lose it. That fine distinction is lost when you say amendment. So it should have been very clearly promoted as citizenship granting bill to refugees or something like that. Americans always are very good at being extremely clear about what their legislations are so that there's no such confusion. Now, just because of the name, Citizenship Amendment Bill, it's been easier for the usual suspects to pretend that this is all about making Muslims lose their citizenship. And so the first thing the government should have done was to communicate this better. And in fact, this is a problem in general that the current Narendra Modi government demonstrates, that their ability to communicate complex issues, especially contentious ones, is not as good as it could have been. So that's the first thing they could have done. The second is, there's a very good question as to why these protests are happening in certain northeastern states. And I think there is an element of Christian religious, I should say mischief, okay? Because most of those states are, massively Christian dominated, and they could have had a legitimate complaint if this bill excluded Christians who were oppressed in Bangladesh or Pakistan or Afghanistan. But in fact, the bill goes, it goes a long way towards including the Christians under that umbrella. In my personal opinion, the Christians should not have been included in this, because, I just looked at the list of Christian countries out there that have Christianity as their state religion. That's like 20 or 30 countries that officially declare themselves as Christian countries. So if you have Christians who are being persecuted in Bangladesh, etc., they could seek some kind of, a refugee status in those countries. And if you remember, there was this woman, Asia, and I forgot her name.
Asia Andrabi.
No. She's the not Andrabi. Andrabi is a Muslim fundamentalist woman in Kashmir. This is Asia Bibi, I think. Yeah.
Asia Bibi. Right. You're right.
Yeah. So she ended up getting citizenship or refugee status in Canada. So Christians have the opportunity to find multiple avenues to escape persecution. Hindus don't. So there is not a single country out there that declares itself as a Hindu country. The last one, the only one, was Nepal. And of course, Nepal has been taken over by communists, and therefore it no longer considers itself a Hindu country. And there's like 40 or so Muslim countries that declare Islam as their state religion. So what you're seeing, and of course there is one, Israel, that considers itself to be a Jewish country, and the official religion is Judaism. And there's a clutch of countries that are Buddhist: Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and probably a few others. So in all these countries, or all these religious groups have some place to go. Hindus are the only people who have no place to go. So in fact, this legislation, it could be argued, should have been applicable only to persecuted Hindus and perhaps other Indic religions like Sikhism and Jainism and perhaps Buddhism. But in fact, at the last moment, they incorporated Christians into it, which is a major concession for Christians.
And
So the
also
fact that
also Zoroastrians.
Zoroastrians, right?
Yeah.
Although the number of Zoroastrians being persecuted in these countries is virtually zero, right? So yeah, so why you were asking this question as to why there is all this fuss in the Northeast, and a lot of it is, I think, mischief by Christians who are unnecessarily opposing this for other, perhaps not so obvious reasons.
Funny you should mention that. I was on a panel debate yesterday, and there was a Christian pastor who was also not supporting it. And I just, expressed my disappointment with him that, here is a country which forced one of its premier cricket players to convert to Islam before he could be given the captaincy of the team. And I'm talking about Yusuf Yohana. And you don't find that a problem, and don't you think that this is reason to celebrate? What about the Christian schools that got bombed? I mean, so the India, and for some reason, people who live in India, they have a very clouded mindset as regards to what they are. I mean, I am very, very clear about who I am. I'm a human being, then I'm a citizen of the United States, and my city or country of birth is India. I'm very clear about this. And I want the best for my Janma Bhumi and Karma Bhumi. I'm very clear about this. I wish Indians were clear about this too. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Indians are an extremely confused lot, and there are many reasons for this. One is this, dawn to dusk celebration of what is called secularism in India. We are fed this pabulum by all the media and all the textbooks and so forth. The secularism is, in fact, the official religion of India, if not cricket, right? So that's a problem. We've been brainwashed. The second is that, in many ways, I hate to say this about the US, but the US has been extraordinarily inimical to many kinds of refugees. For example, in the 1940s, there were ships full of Jews who were running away from Nazi Germany, and the ships would come to America and they would be turned right back and sent back basically to certain death in Germany. And there's also the story of the Komagatamaru, a ship full of refugees from India who showed up in Canada, and that was sent back as well. So I wanted to bring up the issue of USCIRF, talking about Christian agencies. USCIRF is a fundamentalist Southern Christian entity, is the way I look at it, evangelist entity. And so they were making a lot of fuss about how this CAB is going to be a big problem. And in fact, they have no locus standi on the first hand, and nor do they have any moral stand, because not only did they in the past send back Jews and the Komagatamaru Indian refugees, they also did an invalidation. That is, they revoked the citizenship of a bunch of Indians. Okay, that's a pretty terrible story. In the 1900s, they passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which said that no Chinese could become American citizens. In fact, they called it the Asian Exclusion Act, which meant that no Asians could become American citizens. So that's not based on religion, of course. It's based on race, but it's a very inhumane act. And the basic idea was that you can come here and you can work and then you can die, but you cannot buy any property in America, nor can you marry an American woman. So this applied to all Asians. And some of our Sikh brethren, they found a nice loophole around it in California. They went and married Hispanic women, Latino women. And as a result, there still are a bunch of mixed Sikh Latino people living in California. But that's an aside. However, the other thing that they did to Hindus and other Indians was, okay, they said you're no longer able to be American citizens. But then the rationale they gave was only Caucasians were allowed to be American citizens. Okay. And then some enterprising Hindu went and found out that Hindus are in fact Caucasians. And that led to some number of Hindus being granted citizenship. But a few years later, they revoked that citizenship by saying it's not just Caucasians, but it's got to be white Caucasians who have this citizenship. So, the Americans are, at least from these instances that I've just given you, guilty of excluding people from citizenship. On the other hand, what we have done in India is not excluding anybody, it's including new people who are persistently persecuted in their home countries. And this is something that people should be lauding. The number of non-Muslims in Pakistan and in Bangladesh has diminished dramatically from some 20% or so in Pakistan in 1947. It's like 0.6% or something like that. And in Bangladesh, it was about 33% in 1971 when they gained independence. And now it's like 8%. So what happened to all those people, Hindus who were there? They didn't just disappear into thin air. They probably were forcibly converted, or they may have been murdered, who knows, or pushed out into India as refugees, right? So what we're seeing is an attempt to correct a historical wrong and to give some severely persecuted people the avenue of coming to India and at least living a reasonable life here, which India has been famous for offering to many, many groups of people over millennia. So, for example, persecuted Jews came to India, persecuted Zoroastrians came to India, persecuted Christians came to India, and we gave them all refuge. So we have a history of giving refuge to people. But now what's happening is that, there are persecuted Muslims in these neighboring countries, Ahmadis and Shias and so forth. But they were in fact the people who led the creation of Pakistan, and the fact that they have interdenominational struggles in their country, i.e. Pakistan right now, is really no reason for them to be included in this citizenship business. And even more so, the case of Rohingya. Now, Rohingya have nothing to do with us. They are Bengali-speaking people who've been living in Myanmar for some time, and if anybody should take them back, it should be Bangladesh, but Bangladesh refuses to take them back. And I remember this daft woman, this New York Times reporter was saying, well, it's India and China's problem to take care of them. And China just laughed in their face and said, forget it. But here is India, and the Supreme Court is accepting cases, public interest litigation, saying that Rohingya should be allowed to live in India. I'm like, for what? Because apart from everything else, Rohingya have been known to do genocides of Hindus in the state of Rakhine in Myanmar. So there is this strange belief that somehow any person who's persecuted anywhere is eligible for citizenship in India. Now, that was true in olden days when India was a very prosperous country and we could afford to be magnanimous. Now we're a struggling country and we can't feed our own population. The only thing we could do is to say, look, if some of our cultural relatives, i.e. people of the Indic faiths, are being wiped out, basically, they're being genocided in these neighboring countries, maybe it is our duty. So, for example, any Jew who is being persecuted anywhere has automatic right of movement to Israel. And in fact, even if you're not persecuted, I believe a bunch of Indians from the Northeast, there was a particular tribe, they said they're one of the lost tribes of Israel and they have been given asylum in Israel. So there is that avenue. There is some place that they can go, but there is no place for the Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists, or certainly not for the Hindus, Sikhs, and Jains of Bangladesh and Pakistan. And so
and Afghanistan and Afghanistan.
And Afghanistan.
Yeah, because there have been some killings of Sikhs there, very, very reprehensible.
This is true.
Yeah, I mean, the law and order is very tenuous in Afghanistan, is all I can say. I mean, as a population, they are, Indophiles, but there is, they're just overwhelmed by the neighbor, which is one of those messy overlords who wants to have run his diktat. So, Rajeev, sorry to cut you off. If you have anything else to add to that, go ahead. But I think we'll have to wrap it up in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to say is, people who are running around quoting the Constitution, saying Article 14 guarantees equality. This is laughable from two perspectives. On the one hand, Article 14 guarantees equality only to citizens. It doesn't say anything about non-citizens. They probably say you shouldn't persecute them, but there is nothing to say that they must be treated on an equal basis. That's one. The second is that the very same Constitution says in Articles 25 to 30 that they will discriminate on religion, right? So, for example, Hindus have fewer rights than Muslims and Christians. So, lots of people who are running around, left liberals who are quoting the Constitution they're just, talking to their hats, because the Constitution is neither religion agnostic nor is it consistent in the way they talk about it. So, I think,
go ahead.
Yeah,
please go ahead.
And I think the majority of the talking heads who've been talking about the cab, they're out of their minds and they have an agenda and an axe to grind. So I would just ignore them. And the fact that the Rajya Sabha has just passed this, a few minutes ago means that it's a fait accompli.
Absolutely. And we'll be making sure that the USCIRF gets to watch this video, because there is some introspection that they need to do. And we welcome comments from our viewers. Do subscribe to our channel. And if you see it in your heart to donate, feel free to do so. We are available to address your concerns. We do listen to your comments, and we try to do the best we can to, get our act together. We hope that you like the audio today. Rajeev has been very, very diligently trying to work on his side to make sure that the audio comes through flawlessly. And thanks for listening. And Rajeev, thank you very much. We'll be back with more such interesting conversations.
Thank you very much, Sri.